welcome to Ferrari Meadows. If you look around you, you can probably tell how this park got its name. But we were fortunate as an organization to have Mr. Paul Ferrari donate much of this land to us. And since then, our Natural Resource Management Department has been working hard to establish a native meadow, many native prairie flowers that you see around you. So enjoy your time at Ferrari Meadows. Welcome everyone this morning. We'll go ahead and start by calling the roll. Mr. Innocenzi.
Here.
Mr. Bates.
Here.
Mr. Preston. Mr. Eibel.
Here.
And Mr. Dyer.
Here.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is to approve the addendum items. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Mr. Dyer.
Yes.
Mr. Innocenzi.
Yes.
Mr. Bates.
Yes.
And Mr. Eibel.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to approve or amend the meeting minutes from July 14th, 2020.
So moved.
Preston.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, any corrections regarding the minutes from July 14th? If not, we'll go ahead and call the vote to approve the minutes. Mr. Eibel.
Yes.
Mr. Deiderle.
Yes.
Mr. Innocenzi.
Yes.
Mr. Bates.
Yes.
Thank you. Next up is a presentation of financial statement for the month of July 2020. Do you have any questions about the financial statement for the month of July? Did want to point out a significant, very significant donation from a person that was adamant about remaining anonymous. That was an estate donation. It was distribution from a Charles Schwab account. We were named in this person's will, so we were quite blessed to receive two distributions of $587,880. And the wish of this person was that they go into land improvement, land acquisitions, maintenance of property, maintenance of plantings, things of that nature. So that was a significant blessing for Geauga Park District that this person thought so highly of Geauga Park District to leave that amount of money to us. And we actually are expecting another one or two donations from that same person, but they were very adamant about remaining anonymous. So just wanted to point that out. And all right, there are no questions about the financial statement for the month of July. It will be entered into the record. This time we'll move on to vouchers, the presentation of vouchers. I'll entertain a motion to approve all vouchers except those for arms and Preston.
So moved. Second.
Any questions on those vouchers? All right. If not, hearing none, we'll call the vote. Mr. Preston? Oh, he's not here. Mr. Eibel?
Yes.
Mr. Deiderle?
Yes.
Mr. Innocenzi?
Yes.
And Mr. Bates?
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the vouchers for arms.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions on those vouchers? If not, we'll call the vote. Mr. Eibel?
Yes.
Mr. Deiderle?
Yes.
Mr. Innocenzi?
Yes.
And Mr. Bates?
Stay.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to approve the vouchers for Preston.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions on those? If not, we'll call the vote. Mr. Eibel?
Yes.
Mr. Deiderle?
Yes.
Mr. Innocenzi?
Yes.
And Mr. Bates?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for paying the bills. We appreciate it. All right, moving on to new business. Start with the planning and operations update. Morning, Matt.
Morning.
How are you?
Good.
We've had some great weather for construction, so construction projects continue to progress. Was out at Welton's Gorge improvement last week with Matt, and then saw Mr. Bob Zerby, our general contractor, and they're moving right along. It's been a great firm to work with. So, any other updates on construction projects, Matt?
Well, the Gorge is moving along nicely, like you said. They have the framing for the shelter up. Rafters are going up. Hopefully they'll be getting a roof on, and then they're gonna be doing some concrete work, all the flat work. And then there's some landscaping left. Our guys internally are finishing up at Big Creek Park, so there's some punch list items left related to the new camping structure there and the mountain bike trail. So they're finishing that up, and then they're gonna be moving out to Welton's Forge, and they'll start working on the trail system out there and some of the boardwalks. Sunnybrook Preserve restoration, the surveying work's done. We're moving towards kind of reviewing 50% design documents for that project. Staples Meadows, that wetland restoration project, Paul Pierce heading that up. They are just getting ready to start construction on that probably later this month. And then Beaver Creek, we're kind of in the early stages of surveying and design on that one. So everything seems to be moving along okay and kind of on schedule. So.
Weather has cooperated. Thank you, Matt. Any questions for Matt on construction projects? No, go ahead and move on to Swine Creek contract award from your board packet on July 31st, 2020. Request for proposals for design, engineering services were received, reviewed, and evaluated for the Swine Creek Lodge improvements. Proposals have been reviewed and are complete, and we are recommending the Board of Park Commissioners accept the proposal from AECom and award a contract not to exceed $69,300 for professional design and engineering services for the Swine Creek Lodge improvements. So we will entertain a motion to approve the funds for those design and engineering services, and we can entertain questions.
So moved.
Thank you, Al.
Support.
Okay, thank you. All right, any questions? Submitted to 4, only received 2. They are the low bid. For those of you that might be new to the board, as a public agency, we go through the entire design development process, working with architects, working with engineers to have stamped, engineered, approved documents, blueprints, things of that nature, all the way through the process. So that does cost money, but I'm sure the residents of Middlefield and Swine Creek will be excited to get a new lodge down there. So the old one is quite old, so it's an exciting project, and it'll be a nice addition to Swine Creek Park. So thank you very much for the motion and second. Any questions? If not, we'll go ahead and call the vote. Mr. Bates?
Yes.
Mr. Eibel?
Yes.
Mr. Dieterle?
Yes.
And Mr. Innocenzi?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to Veterans Legacy Woods contract for the same, design and engineering. On July 8, 2020, 9 responses to the Veterans Legacy Woods request for qualifications were received. We've attached a memo. The OHM advisors score the highest as the most qualified firm. We recommend the Park District enter into contract negotiations with OHM advisors for professional design and engineering services for Veterans Legacy Woods improvements. If the Park District is not able to negotiate a contract with OHM, the negotiations will terminate, and the Park District will follow Ohio Revised Code, Section 153, 69, and enter into negotiations with the next most qualified firm. The process will be followed until a contract is negotiated. So entertain a motion to negotiate contracts for the design.
Question,
Yeah, go ahead.
the company you're suggesting, have we worked with them in the past? We have any track records with any of these previous companies?
We have not worked with OHM in the past. They are new to Geauga Park District, but they have come with considerable qualifications throughout the state of Ohio. Matt, you want?
I was gonna say, we haven't worked with OHM in the past. They have done a lot of comparable public and park work, very similar to this project. We went through kind of a request for a qualifications process, then a proposal, and we actually interviewed every firm that submitted. And out of the firms, they did score the highest.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
Matt?
moved.
Okay, thank you. We get a second, Mr. Dierley's motion.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'll go ahead and call the vote. Mr. Innocenzi?
Yes.
Mr. Bates?
Yes.
Mr. Eibel?
Yes.
And Mr. Dierley?
Yes.
Thanks so much. Next up is Resolution 1120, Budget Amendments number 11 and 12. The following actions are being submitted for a revenue certification for an estate donation of $587,880.87 and a supplemental appropriation of $529,000 in the land improvement fund for purchase of land. The certification is to certify that revenue from that very generous donation from that distribution of that will and that Charles Schwab account. The supplemental appropriation is to put the total funding for the purchase of the Gallo property,